Welcome everyone. This is Wednesday, the 9th of June. Those of you that were tuned in for the last few minutes, we've got a close-up look of me. It's not great. I don't have any makeup on. I dressed in my suit today. A few people made some comments last week. Just because you're at home doesn't mean you should be so casual with your sleeves rolled up. So I'm back. I had to dust off this suit. I couldn't obviously go to the dry cleaner, which is near my work. Greg's best friend, the Victorian government doesn't allow us to drive more than 5Ks. The good news is, for those of you that have been locked up here in Victoria, we're now allowed to slowly ease back into life. So next week, if you do tune in, we'll be back coming to you from our office. Hopefully I will have someone helping me to go on Facebook so I won't have to drag it out for so long. So that's really, really good news. And I think anyone that is stuck at home, this weather at the moment is pretty ordinary, so perhaps it's not the worst being at home, but I know it is very, very painful for those of you that have got young kids doing school. Zoom school is tough, and particularly for those people that don't have a Zoom class going on all day and have got to help their kids with the worksheet. I know a couple of the guys in our office have got that, and they find it very draining to the point that a good friend of ours here who works with us, Colin McKenzie, he goes out to his garden in the rain and sits down the end with an umbrella to try and avoid the chaos that goes on inside. So that's very exciting news. All right, let's dive into it. As I said, we've got a lot to go through today. I'll try and keep it short and sharp because there will be some noise happening in my background, and I think everyone's backgrounds as we get closer to that 3 o'clock mark as school starts to wrap up. So we've got quite a few interesting topics to get through today. Sorry you've been outbid. We talked about getting gazumped before, and it's happening more and more to people, so it's good to run through that. Fortune favours the brave. This is a great story that we had in last weekend's newsletter, and I'm sure we have plenty of questions from everyone on the call today about this. House prices continue to go up. I think we saw another record in terms, not the fastest that we've had like we did have back in March, but definitely one of the strongest national growths that we've had for the month of May. So that'll be good. I think we'll run through some of those key stats. Investors are back, perhaps not quite to the vengeance as we've seen, but I think slowly those that are smart are seeing that, the perhaps doom and gloom that everyone was predicting at this time last year hasn't eventuated. And if they don't jump back on that bus, it's going to leave the station and they will be left way, way behind in or capital gains that they did not get to make themselves and someone else did. And of course, mortgage rates down. And obviously we know that has been very much key to the way that Australia has navigated through this last 12 to 18 months, and definitely is what's continuing to set us on the right path. So what did we see? Last weekend's results for last Saturday, obviously skewed. You'll see that national clearance rate just over 73%. Previous weekend, we didn't see a big change in Melbourne auction results. Clearly, this weekend, there was a little bit less excitement. People were prepared for it. So I think what we saw the previous week's results were that a lot of people brought those auctions forward to Thursday nights, and that went through. So obviously that's dragging the average down, but still a pretty respectable number there, which I'm pretty surprised. So I think it was circa 30% odd of those auctions that were planned to go ahead in Melbourne were withdrawn. So that's obviously impacted it. And I think about, 59% of those sales all occurred prior to auction. So I think everyone was pretty quick to see that perhaps there was an opportunity to jump on. Some of those vendors might have been a little bit worried. Should they wait? Should they delay? Should they not? It's very hard here, obviously. Great news, as I said at the top of the hour, that those of us here in Melbourne are going to be released on Friday. But I think it'd be fair enough if you were a seller, is this going to go on and on? Should I just sell now while I've still got interest? Should I delay it, have an in-person auction, hopefully this weekend? Very, very hard. But I think all in all, again, it shows the continued strength. And I think we were seeing, I was just having a look, I'm just trying to read some of the stats I wrote down here. So year to date, it's a really interesting point, and I think we might talk on this later as we get into the questions, because quite a few people ask this a lot to us, is so during 2021, 26% of the reported sales all occurred prior to auction. So it's definitely something that's occurring as people are wanting to make sure they don't miss out. And likewise, sellers are seeing offers too good to refuse and are jumping on that. So that's definitely an interesting trend that we're seeing happen here, and definitely shows that people are keen not to get gazumped or outbid there. All right, so what do we see? Realestate.com, as always, produce these, what we call leading indicators. These, for those of you that are first-time listeners and are not sure what we're talking about here with the leading indicator. So realestate.com, they measure all of the activity that goes on their website as it pertains to sales listings and also rental listings. And they produce their own index, which gives a bit of a gauge as to the amount of activity and the traffic that they're seeing, and as to whether they determine that they are an engaged person. So that is, they're taking certain steps within their website, like requesting details, checking out floor plans, booking inspections, that lead them to believe that they're a high intent buyer. So it's always good to see. This is pretty much giving you a bit of an idea as to the depth of the market, as well as a bit of a guide as to what we should expect to see in terms of results in the next couple of months. So let's get stuck into it. The first one here is the national result. So if we drill into it a little bit more, buyer demand is relatively flat, you can see, for the last few months. So, this line's tracking pretty flat, not a lot's happened. The major trend that we're seeing this year is obviously the red line is apartments, the blue line is houses, and the black line is both combined. So you can see through history, they've been pretty close together. They're starting to separate a little bit and seeing more and more people looking at apartments. And I think that's a clear thing. As affordability of houses get further and further out of reach, people are starting to flip. And I think the guys will talk further in this session about what we expect to see happening for apartments. So interesting there. Let's jump into Melbourne. Obviously, this is here just for Victoria. So if we drill into the stats, you can see this was obviously impacted by the lockdown. So you can see it did drop off these last couple of weeks. It didn't fall a huge amount there. And I think, pretty much we still expect to see that rebound back as people realise they can still go and do inspections. Previous lockdowns, we have had the ability to do some private inspections. This one, we weren't allowed to do anything. So it's only natural that we expected to see that occur here in Victoria. All right, let's have a look at the same one for rental. So national here, pretty flat, as you can see. Not a lot happening here. If we have a look over to Victoria, same thing. It's obviously dipped off these last couple of weeks as expected, like I said, with houses. I think probably one of the interesting things that we've seen here is that, there's still a relatively high demand for rentals, as far as it pertains to forward looking in these listings, which is interesting, particularly for me. I mean, I know we're seeing it with our guys on the ground. We're working 7 days a week and really working hard for our landlords. So it might just seem normal to us. But what I think is interesting is that there still is, even without the students, there is still a lot of activity. But typically what we're seeing is people are, upgrading, downgrading, changing, and they're becoming a lot more transient and fluid. So, it's really important that you sort of set your mindset right for this market, where previously when it was tight, you'd have a tenant and, you'd be pretty confident that unless there was something wrong or a major life change happened to them, that they would be there for a long time. Whereas now they're getting a lot more transient. So that's definitely something that we're seeing firsthand. I just saw a comment from someone mentioning about my hair. Yes, it is a little bit wild, obviously being at home. I was just outside before we came here. I've got a leak in my roof, so I was standing up on the roof trying to work out where it's coming from. Thankfully not in this room. And so my hair did get blown away wildly. And those of you that think I have a toupee will realise I do not, because it's still here. But yes, it is messy. So thank you for those comments I can see from people coming through. All right, those of you that are worried about my hair, why don't you focus on this? My question is always to everyone to set the scene. What is more important? Is it 1, information, or 2, knowledge? So what is it that you believe is more important for you to understand? Is it knowledge or information? All right, hopefully everyone's made a decision. Those of you that are long-time listeners, I expect you to know this. The answer is knowledge. So if I just unpack that for a moment, information is organised data about something. So it's facts, it's figures. Knowledge, on the other hand, is an understanding through experience or education. So, knowledge is being able to take on board, process that information, and actually understand what it means and apply it to what you should be doing in the future. So, information is very much backwards looking. It's happened, it's done, it's been, it's past. Whilst there is some forward-looking things, like we talked about those leading indicators from REA, typically most information out there is historical. So you really need that knowledge to be able to translate what that means, whether it's important to you, and how you should set yourself up going forward. So, that leads me to today's session. In case those of you didn't catch at the start, it's all about you. We do this for you guys. So, get involved, get on those questions, hit them hard, because it's very much, we enjoy and we thrive off getting those questions from you guys. And that's about today's session. So very much, invite you to, if you are on Facebook, sign up and join us on Zoom Live so that you can ask those questions of us. And really what we're hoping to do is give you what we call actionable knowledge. So, any questions you've got about that information that's been happening or you've been processing over the last week, 2 weeks, months, whatever it is, and we can try and break that down, understand it, and you can then off that create your own set of actionable knowledge, because what's important for me is going to be different to what's important for you, what's important for Greg, what's important for Jack, and what's important for the director. Everyone is going to be different given your personal circumstances. So you need those skills to be able to do that. And that's what today's all about. All right, I've been going on for a while now. So for those of you that don't know, my name is James Maitland. I'm the general manager here at Salvo. I've been doing this for decades and decades, and I've helped people just like you on the call create more than 11,000 homes. So it's what I love doing. It's what we all love doing here. Today, I'm joined by regulars, Greg Arbeck, Jack Jan, and Lucas Karras. These guys have got a wealth of experience, and they will be answering all your questions today. I will be hosting and going through the Q&A. So for those of you that haven't done this before, again, this is obviously for people on Zoom only. Facebook, unfortunately, you don't get the opportunity to ask your questions live. So do, as I said before, join us live next week on Zoom if you do want to get involved. Simple, 2 ways. You can raise your hand or drop it in the Q&A. I've seen a ton of questions already coming through in the Q&A. So I think everyone pretty much by now, I think, 12 months on from coronavirus lockdowns, everyone knows how to use Zoom. Straightforward, drop them in. We'll get there. Obviously, feel free to use the chat. I can't monitor that because there's just too much. I can see a flurry of activity going on, so I can't keep a track of it. So obviously, please use the Q&A if you do have any questions. All right, so let's get stuck into things. As I said, we'll run probably for 20-odd minutes, 25 minutes. And if we do, don't get to your questions or we didn't quite answer it how you want, feel free to ask the question again, raise your hand, or we will hang around at the end and try and ask some more questions if they're still sitting there. Otherwise, feel free to reach out directly to us. So first up, Lucas, CoreLogic threw out the latest stats for the month of May. Give us a couple of the high-level numbers, national and maybe Victoria. What did we see?
Look, house prices once again surged in price. There's combined capitals for the month of May. They did go up 2.3%, which is the second fastest increase rate since the 1980s. Melbourne, just to be more specific, for the month was 1.8%. For the quarter, 5.5%, and total return for the year, 8%. Now, dwelling houses jumped by 10.6% over the last year nationally, which is the strongest growth we've had for 11 years.
All right, so, we talked about before in March, we had the strongest growth in 32 years. Whilst not quite the same, it's pretty rare that we're going to see these kind of, strong growth month after month after month. And there's no sort of real signs of easing up. I know we had a few questions over the weekend from people emailing through. They were sort of asking about, how's it actually looking in terms of demand and supply and so forth. And I think, the typical demand is pretty much insatiable at the moment. But what are we seeing on the supply side?
Look, James, the total listings fell by 6.3% for the month and down 19.2% for the same time last year. To put it quite simply, 79,000 new listings is not enough to meet the current demand.
So sorry, Lucas, just to clarify, you're saying it was down 16% on this time last year, the number of listings.
19.2. 19.2%.
So call that 20%. So, just in the midst of coronavirus and everything, we had more listings than we do now in this sort of hot market.
And on the flip side, sales activity for the last 3 months to May was tracking 37% higher than the 5-year average.
So if we can unpack that for people to sort of understand. So we are, higher than the 5-year average in terms of the number of transactions that are actually occurring, as we're seeing in those auction results being strong week after week. But there's less listings than we've had for a long time. So, would it be fair to say that if we keep going at this rate, we're going to dry up? There's not going to be enough product to buy at the moment, is it? Would that be a fair assumption?
Very fair assumption, and that's why the prices, everybody's saying the prices will continue to grow. It's very plain. It's very interesting here to note, James, that with the pricing with the houses are becoming more and more unaffordable. Therefore, we're seeing a very big swing towards units, and unit sales are now tracking 15% above the average. Another thing, because if you remember the beginning of Corona, we're talking how regional markets were really super hot. It's important for those people that want to, keep up with what's happening. For the second time in the last 3 months, the capital city prices outpaced the regional markets.
Well, I know all of us on the panel would have expected that, but I think most of the commentators out there that were writing for the major publications were on this regional sort of bandwagon. So I think that's
exactly.
Good to see that come back in. So I think, it's interesting. I'll give you guys a story as we talk about it. I was speaking with some family friends and, they were wanting to sell the home. Now, in fairness, I'm not going to tell you who it is. I've been looking to sell the home for the last 10 years. So they're very much what we call a tire kicker. But what was interesting listening to them is, perhaps they are serious now, or maybe they're not, but, they're really concerned that they're not actually going to find what they're looking for in their next home if they sell before they do it. So, I think, would that be fair to say, Lucas, that's also a factor that's contributing to the low level of listings out there, is that people are kind of saying, well, if I sell what I've got, what if I don't find a replacement or I can't find what I want?
Exactly. Obviously there's less options. And look, as you said before, James, you gave a very interesting figure before that more than 50% of the properties sold prior to auction this weekend. So people know, even if there's a new listing, by the time they look at it, by the time they do any searches, it's gone. Yep. So people are worried that they're going to FOMO, my favorite new word. So it's on everybody's minds. And it's seriously now people are saying, yes, I can get the best price if I sell, but will I be in risk of missing out buying something myself?
All right. Got an interesting question here from Jono. He's asked it 3 times, so I know he's keen. What about investors? Are we seeing any activity from investors? Are they back? Are they still sort of in hibernation?
Yes, James. The short answer is definitely. The investor is back. They are back. Yeah. So according to the figures, we can say
Jack, you're not saying investors are back because you convinced me to buy another 2 apartments last week, is it? Or we're actually seeing some hard numbers out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I want to tell you these the hard numbers. Look, the new mortgage commitment from the investor and rose 2.1% in April, which lifted the total number of up to the 8 billion, which is the highest figure since 2017 to June 2017. As we're knowing, in the April, the total new home loan commitments is 31.1 billion. So from the investor, they have 8 billion, which takes about 25.9% of the whole new home commitment. So the investor take almost 26%, which is back to the level before the corona.
Okay. So the obvious question I know everyone always asks, and again, it's a favorite topic, is oh, the banks are going to get the, the handbrake put on, APRA is going to step in and so forth. But, Jack, how does that compare to last time that, the APRA did sort of slam the brakes on everything and we had that correction as investors got shut out? If they're at 25, 26%, how high were they before? I think it was somewhere in the 50s, wasn't it?
Yes, it's 25% is well down compared with the peak time, which is happened was on the 2015. I think the peak time, the share of the investor in the market is 46%. So that makes the regulator, the bank, they all keep looking. We will reintroduce the new lending standard or the new restrictions. So we're very confident to say currently the level 25%, which is normal, and we don't really need to worry about the regulator, the bank. They will change any lending policy and net lending standard or any further restriction will be added on it.
Okay. Jono, hopefully that answered your question. I think, what is interesting for those of you that have read a lot of these stories, if you are looking to invest or you're an investor and you're a bit worried about it, I think it's top of mind and perhaps makes a good headline because, as investors, it was non-existent. Every investor was in hibernation the last 12 months, unsure with all those rental moratorium laws that were around that, are long gone now. So there wasn't a lot of activity. So, 1 in every 4 houses or, loans that are being written, new loans that are being written last month being for an investor, that's pretty normal. In fact, that's not really a level to be worried about at all. So if you are reading some of those and you're getting a bit worried, I don't think you have to worry too much. As Jack mentioned, once it becomes, every second home or new loan is for investors, that's where I think, the banks will sort of think about it. Now, take in mind that a lot has changed in the last 6 years. So, the banks are still having to write loans in the way they were doing before. So I know we've talked about it a lot. And Greg, you might have some comments, when it comes to interest rates about this as well. But, we're seeing that, the lending standards are far superior to what they were before. And so it's very much about risky loans. There's no issue. It's not up to the regulators to control house prices. They're very much just making sure that if people are borrowing, they can afford it and that our banks, therefore, are stable. So, it's very much what they're concerned about is to make sure that we still have one of the best banking systems in the world. So I think there's not too much to worry at the moment, definitely for those of you that are concerned about that out there. Greg, interest rates, I mentioned there, are still low, and I think that's one of the main drivers. What's the general consensus from people out there in terms of these low rates? Is that adding more fuel to the fire with people looking to keep buying? And what are we seeing as the direction of rates?
We can't hear you.
We got you, Greg? Looks like we might have lost him. I can't see him on my screen. All right, well, we'll come back.
That better? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you now, Greg. Yeah. I'm sure you probably gave us your best points then, while we couldn't hear you.
Sorry about that. Anyway, so being at home, mate, it's what happens,
yes.
So.
Well, I know you. Tell the truth. You're in your band room. You were just smashing out a jam quickly.
With interest rates being very low, it is absolutely putting fuel on the fire. It's pushing prices. More and more people are getting into the market, and in some respect, people go, it's very hard to get in. But on the counter side of it, it's actually adding wealth to people's households. So when the price of the price of housing goes up and your value goes up, people get more confident. And then willing to spend money, which then puts money back into the economy, which then keeps moving things forward. So there are some negatives, but generally the positive is that creates wealth and it allows people to start spending and get more confident and get the economy moving.
All right, good. All right, so let's move on because I can see a lot of questions. I want to try and get to it because I can see we're already starting to get short on time. So just looking through here, I'm trying to get a general consensus. There seems to be a lot of people sort of asking what should I be doing? How do I get into the market? Prices are going up, affordability, and so forth. So perhaps first, has someone got some ideas or some tips as to how best people can get into the market now, particularly if they're seeing affordability become an issue?
Well, James, we've covered this on a number of occasions, and what we did a few weeks back, we even saw that the Australian housing market is huge. So you've got to take that step. You've got to be brave. You've got to find a way of getting in there. And the sort of advice we've been giving people, instead of, as we talked about, the acreage that everybody would like, look for something like an apartment, get a foothold on something, talk to your parents, don't be too proud about that, get them to assist you. There's various ways, but get a foothold in the market, realizing it's a long-term investment. But over that time frame, we always see, I've been here, as you can hear, I'm a South African, I've been here over 22 years. And in that time frame, we've seen prices double almost every 10 years. So it's a piece of advice we say, get into that. It's the biggest market in this country. To find a way of getting in, and we can assist you with that give you some tips. But yes, you've got to get in there.
Yeah. I think the easiest thing, Tiger Woods and Nike say it all the time, just do it. That's one of the best things is you can procrastinate forever, but buying a home shouldn't take more than, I go through a great sort of process, and pretty much break it down into a 90-day process. It shouldn't take you more than 1, 2, or at most 3 of those cycles to find a home if you've got yourself in order and your things sorted. So, I think get in, do it. Greg, also, I guess one of the things we talk about a lot is, as affordability gets harder and harder on a freestanding home, perhaps you are far better off sticking to the area that you know and you love and a great inner city area that you're comfortable with, and focusing on some medium density living, apartments, a great option. And I think definitely there's a big price gap between the two as well, isn't it?
It's huge, and increasing even more. I think, as what Lucas was saying, we are seeing apartments starting to catch up, but there's still a huge discrepancy between freestanding and apartments. So it really makes sense for first homeowners, people getting out there, to rather stay in a great location, buy something affordable like an apartment, like in South Bank.
All right, good. I like that. A shameless plug there. All right, so conscious just with time. So I saw a few people asking, and I think this is definitely something we always get asked about. Buying a home isn't something that you do every day, every week, every month. Typically for most people, they might do it. Some people only ever do it. I mean, some people never do it in their life. A lot of people do it 1, 2, maybe 3 times in their life. It can be quite daunting, and particularly in a market like it is now, when it's hot and there's a lot of competition out there, it can be very hard as to know what to do and make sure you've locked up your deal. So, Lucas, I think we've talked about this quite a lot, and I know you love giving some tips. So perhaps can you sort of explain to people as to, what they've got to be careful about? And then, as always, being Mr. Tipman, give them a few key tips as to what people can do to make sure when they find that right property, as Greg said, whether it be a freestanding home or a great apartment in a great location, how to make sure they've actually secured that deal.
Thanks, James. I thought you'd never ask. Look, first of all, a lot of people believe that if they've signed a contract, they've made an offer, they paid a holding deposit, they go home happy thinking they bought a property. But that's not the case. The contract needs to be dated, exchanged unconditionally with a 10% deposit. Only then you secure the property. So that's why a lot of people actually miss out, because they go home thinking, okay, I've signed the contract, I've left $5,000 deposit, it's my property. That's not the case. Okay, so you got to remember that what happens. It's the agent's legal obligation to present to the vendor all offers until exchange contracts. So the vendor might see you at 5, somebody else at 6, somebody else at 7, somebody else at 9, and get an offer from each one of those people. So the only way to know that you got the house 100% is when the contract is finally dated, exchanged and dated, and a full 10% deposit has been paid.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I know as agents, we often get a lot of disappointed buyers, but I think it's important to understand before you hurl abuse at all of us that ultimately, we work for the vendor. So our job as an agent is not just to open the door and stand there and look good in our suits. It's to actually work hard and get the best possible outcome, price, deal terms we can for our customers, which are the sellers of these properties. So, it's important that as a buyer, you understand that. And therefore, there's probably a key things that I'm sure Lucas is going to run through in a moment that you can do to make sure you present the best offer so that, you don't get gazumped by other potential buyers out there. And that is to some degree why people love auctions because once that hammer falls, I think that's the great thing why I love auctions is that, that's it, it's yours, it's done, and it's gone there. So, Lucas, for those people that don't want to get gazumped, what are some tips for them?
Great. I got 5 tips for them. First of all, have your finance conditionally approved. So you're ready to go. Second of all, get a copy of the contract as soon as possible. Tip number 3, ask the agents for written evidence that your offer has been presented to the vendor. Tip number 4, do your pest and building inspection. And tip number 5, get that contract reviewed by your solicitor or your conveyancer as soon as you get it. So they are the tips, because if you get, as I say, all your ducks in a row, then you can sort of be the first one off the bat and try to secure the property and avoid missing out.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll give advice to everyone out there, because I've seen quite a few people asking more questions, which given time, we might stay around the end and try and get through them, is the best thing that you can possibly do, as Lucas said, be prepared, have everything organised, sign the contract, staple to it your deposit check so that as a seller, it's simple. All I got to do is go, yes, countersign it and it's done. Often people that you see missing out is when they give verbal offers or, they might email through an offer. And as a seller, they don't have that, simple thing that they know that all I've got to do, it's sitting in front of me, is sign and date it and the deal is done. But what if they change their mind and they want to change this term and that term? They're not quite giving the price they want. They want too short a settlement, too long a settlement. Don't be afraid, as Lucas said, get in early, review the contract, be prepared to put pen to paper, because I can tell you as an agent, anyone that signs a contract and gives me the deposit check, unless, they're lowballing the price, if it's within the guide that I've given them and it's a good offer, I will be pushing hard with the vendor to get that signed. And I think everyone will be doing that out there as agents because, it shows the commitment. So that's something definitely I think, wrapping everything Lucas said together is don't be afraid to sign the contract, because that's one of the best ways you can secure a property is to get that squared away.
And James, through experience, I can tell you all these years I will be doing this, when you see the 10% deposit and no conditions, are not subject to pest and building, not subject to this, not subject to that, the vendor it helps dramatically to get your offer across the road.
100%. All right. So look, it's just gone past the top of the hour. So let's just run through a couple of closing comments. I'm just going to pull up. So 2021, we are basically at the halfway mark. Those of you that join all the time, I'm slowly washing out this image more and more, and then I'll have 2022 rising towards the end of the year. So if you don't get bored of my voice by that time, you will see this slowly change as we get through. So, if you enjoyed today's session, then great. I'm really, really pleased that we could add some value. If you didn't, feel free to give us some feedback. As I said, we do this for you guys. And so I'd really, really like to be able to improve if we can. So as I see it, there's, you've got 3 choices from here as to what you can do with the rest of this year. So the first and the easiest choice is do nothing. What I just caution everyone on is when they say, no, I'm happy with everything, is that if you don't make a change, then you're not going to get a different result. So if you're one of those people that's been looking for a home for the last year, 18 months, 24 months and you don't make a change, don't expect to get a different result. If you're happy and everything's going great and you don't want to change anything, then fantastic. I'm happy for you, and I'm glad you joined us, and I'm glad if I could give you some value. But what I hope you do as a bare minimum is take on board what we've discussed today. Think about that concept of information versus knowledge and creating your database of actionable knowledge, as well as all the great questions that we had and the discussion we went through and unpicking what's happened in the last 7 days. And take that on board, build your own database and go out there and do it. Buy that next property, buy an investment property, move out of mum and dad's home for the first time and into your first renter, whatever it is, take those steps. But what I think is the best value and what I really, really hope you do is you do it with us. So those of you that don't know much about Salvo and what we do, we're a very big organisation. We do a ton of different things. But ultimately, we have one single focus and what everything that we do is all based around. And that is helping people create homes. So, whether it be building you a new home, whether it be helping you sell a home, whether it be renting a home for the first time, anything along that whole spectrum of creating a home is what we're all about and what we love doing. So we'd really love to be able to help you in whatever it is that you are with your journey. So how can we do it? What's the next logical step that I want you to take if you do choose to do it with us? Well, I think the most active and the most dedicated way that I can do this to help you is for us to be able to meet up one-on-one. So what I've done in everyone's diaries for the next 5 days, I've set some specific time I've blocked in their diaries for these one-on-one sessions with you, everyone that's on the call today. So jump in and grab those before they go and get your preferred time. Now, you might be saying, oh, but I don't have time. Oh, I'm not ready. I need to do a bit more organising. No, you don't. You don't. All you got to do, it's 15, 20 minutes. It's a phone call. We can, if you are in Victoria, from Friday onwards, I think we can meet face-to-face. It's a phone call. It's Zoom. It's, a coffee at the local coffee shop, whatever it is. And really, it's simple and it's straightforward. These things, it's the smallest commitment you can make and be realistic about getting some value out of it. We'll run through what are you doing? What are you looking at doing? How are things? Chat about the market a little bit more. And really, try and work out if you are a good fit for us, because ultimately we're not going to be able to help everyone, and that's just the sad truth as it is. Not everyone is going to be prepared to do the work. So if you're prepared to roll up your sleeves, get involved, you want to increase that knowledge, and ultimately you want to achieve that goal of creating a home, whether it be an investment property or a home for yourself, a home for your kids, whatever it is that you want to do, if you're prepared to actually take that step, move forward, then you're a perfect fit for us. So very rarely do I ever say to people, look, no, we can't help you. But sometimes it does happen. So that's it. It's 15 minutes, 20 minutes if you want. It's not a big commitment. And I guarantee you, if you take that step, you will see some results and we can help you along the way and really set forward a plan as to how we can work together over the coming time period. So jump on, book those now. How do you do it? Really, really simple. There's 3 options you've got. The first one is there should be a link in the chat. Click on that link. It'll take you straight to the booking page. Jump on and secure your spot. When you join Zoom, your browser, your web browser, whatever it is, should have redirected you to that page. I did see already a few coming through during the question session. Obviously, some people saw it and skipped ahead. So thank you. Look forward to meeting you guys in the coming week. Lastly, if you are busy right now, you're not sure when you've got time in your diary, or perhaps you want to chat to someone about it, you don't need to, because it's not a big commitment. But if you do want to, that's fine. I understand some people are like that. We'll send you a follow-up email after this session with that link so you can book it at your leisure. Obviously, the quicker you do it, you'll have the best pick of the times. And if you leave it too long, those spots will be gone. So it's easy. It's simple. Do it now. I guarantee you'll get some value out of it. So that is it for this Wednesday, the 9th of June. We do this every single week, as always, whether we're in lockdown, not a lockdown, partial lockdown, rain, hail, shine. As you've seen, someone commented about my hair being a bit crazy. I've been outside in the wind. We're here every single Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. We've got plenty of international guests I know always join us on the call. We love doing this. So from me and everyone on the panel, thank you very much. I appreciate you putting aside the time in your day this afternoon to join us. Those of you that got involved and asked the questions, I love your enthusiasm and I thank you for doing it. Those of you that are joining us on Facebook, either live now or watching the replay, thank you as well. If you do want to get involved, I guarantee you'll enjoy it even more. Please do register and join us on Zoom next week, next month, whenever it is. Those of you that are repeat customers as well, thank you. Love having you on here. I'm glad that we're adding some value. So that is it. We will hang around for a few minutes after if you've got some more questions. So those of you that got to go, once again, thank you very much. I know everyone here thanks you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. All right, guys, let me just see if there's any more questions coming up through here. Just bear with us a moment. I can still see a lot of people online. So if you are there, feel free to jump in and say something if you want me to ask anything more. No, look, I think we've covered most of these. So if I have missed your question, you're still on the line. I will go through the transcript and get back to you if we've missed anything. Otherwise, feel free to join us again next week and ask those questions again. So for those of you that are still on the line, thank you again. Hopefully you're not asleep. As I end this session, that may wake you up if you are. So once again, thank you very much. This hopefully will be the last time you'll see me in my home and everyone else in their homes. We'll see you live from our office again next Wednesday. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.